on Philippine Tech Roadmap, Transformation of the Philippine ICT Infrastructure. So on behalf of PHINEX and the ICT Committee led by Chair Mark Briseta and Vice Chair Bong Paloma and Adrian Bruhen, of course, with Liaison Director Sondi Garcia, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you, especially to our special guests who will be introduced properly later on. We are so glad to be with that all of you can be here this morning. We're having this more of these face-to-face events, and we're happy to interact with all of you. These past years, digitalization has played a major role not only on streamlining business processes, but enabling businesses to survive, recover, and thrive through the pandemic. Indeed, the level of digitalization have exponentially risen for the past 3 years, and enterprises are expected to continue to invest in their digital infrastructure. Digitalization is not without its attendant risks, and it is extremely important that both risks and opportunities are thoroughly considered and evaluated in embarking into the digital journey. So, for example, our current administration is reduced in stepping up its effort in this space. For example, the E-Governance Act. So this afternoon or this morning, we are so fortunate to have with us today. Later on, we will have DICT Secretary Ivan Uy. We will have BSP Deputy Governor Mamerto Tangonan and SEC Commissioner Kelvin Lee to share and explain to us what are the relevant digitalization efforts that their respective organization have made, what further initiatives they have in the pipeline, and how the private sector can help. All these are expected to enhance transparency and ease of doing business in our country, which will further spur trade and investment growth in the years to come. So we look forward to a meaningful and insightful interaction with our guest speakers later on. I also would like to thank our sponsors in this event, of course, Huawei and AMTI, my good friend Alexon, whom I've known since high school years. Good to see you again. Again, have a good day.
Thank you, President Wilson. For today, we are very fortunate to bring you past speakers for this event. Each speaker will be discussing topics under their field of expertise. Our speakers will have 15 minutes for their presentation, to be followed by Q&A, open forum, wherein live audience will be allowed to ask their questions to our speakers. Now, let me introduce the first speaker. Our first speaker is Deputy Governor Mamerto Tangonan. He's the head of the Payments and Currency Management Sector, or PCMS, of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, BSP. He is tasked to address the interplay between digital money and physical currency and support the digital transformation of the country's financial services. He leads the PCMS in maintaining the safety and integrity of the Philippine currency, as well as ensuring a well-functioning payments cash ecosystem that fosters long-term economic growth. Deputy Governor Tangonan brings with him over 28 years of experience in digital and traditional financial services, telecommunications, technology, financial inclusion, and consulting services. Immediately before joining the BSP, he led a 6-year United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, funded program on the e-peso project, aimed at accelerating the shift of the Philippine economy from cash to digital payments. In this capacity, he spearheaded a team in providing technical assistance to the BSP in policy formulation and implementation of the National Retail Payment System, or NRPS. Deputy Tangonan earned his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of the Philippines and his executive master in business administration degree from the Asian Institute of Management. He also attended the executive education program on financial inclusion policy design at the Harvard Kennedy School. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Deputy Governor Mamerto Tangonan.
Thank you very much, Bong. Commissioner Kelvin Lee, SEC, officers and members of the FINEX, including my very dear friend, Ms. Zondi Garcia. Good morning to everyone. I am pleased to be here and share with you all updates on the Bangko Central's journey on broadening the adoption of digital payments in the country. We at the BSP believe that digital transformation of the Philippine economy and the financial system is a critical driver for propelling inclusive recovery and sustainable growth. And based on our first-hand experience, enabling reforms and proper regulation bring about and sustain the growth of digital innovation in financial services, which support economic activities. On my next slide, on the BSP Digital Payments Transformation Roadmap, recognizing the significant potential for payment digitalization to support the digital transformation of the Philippine economy, we launched the BSP Digital Payments Transformation Roadmap 2020 to 2023, which contains our vision for payments digitalization, including our two strategic objectives to be achieved by end of this year. First one being that the share of digital payments in the total retail payments volume must reach 50%. That's by volume. And second, equally important, is to onboard at least 70% of adult Filipinos into the financial system by making sure that they own at least one transaction account that can be used for payments and also for other financial services. The roadmap stands on three critical areas of focus. The first is on developing digital payment streams. Second is improving the digital finance infrastructure. And last but not least, establishing sound digital governance standards that align with global best practices. So the first pillar of the roadmap endeavors to develop digital payment streams that by creating compelling large-scale digital payments use cases to increase consumer awareness and promote the adoption of digital payment platforms. So basically, this pillar would cover digital payment services that address the various payment needs for people and businesses to shift to digital payments. Then the digital alternative must offer not only a compelling alternative, but also an appropriate and viable alternative to whatever method that corporates or even individuals are currently using. So included there are the merchant payments, utility payments, supplier payments, remittances, and social benefits. The second pillar involves the development of secure, reliable, efficient, and interconnected systems to facilitate smooth payment transactions and the adoption of new platforms and solutions to reduce the cost of providing an array of digital products and services. In other words, the key is the interoperability. So instead of having fragmented small networks, very inefficient, so we established one national payment system of interconnected accounts that can pay each other. Finally, the third pillar on digital governance and standards entails establishing appropriate regulatory frameworks to ensure that the provision of digital products and services meets minimum legal and prudential expectations and safeguards the integrity, security, and privacy of customer data. On the developments in the digital payments landscape, because of our joint efforts with the industry and the whole of government, we noted a sustained increase in the adoption of digital payments. Our latest measurement results disclose that the share of digital payments to total retail payments volume in the country grew to 30.3% in 2021. Right now, we're still taking the measurement for 2022. And I was telling Zondi that my estimate is that makes it to at least 40%, then we'll be way to easily achieving the 50% target. And considering that in 2020, the share of digital payments over total retail payments volume was at 20.1%. So indeed, it is achievable. These are outstanding improvements compared to the 1% we started when we started in 2000, when we first took the measurement in 2013. Imagine out of all retail payments transaction volume, only 1% of that was done digitally. Financial inclusion likewise improved as the rise in retail payments digitalization coincided with the increase in holdings of e-money accounts. We note that account ownership significantly increased from 29% in 2019 to 56% in 2021, the highest growth to date for the country. Based on research and surveys, 85% of Filipinos use payment services. It is the most widely used financial service. And entering into financial service mean that you'll be using payments, and that could help you get into the other financial services to help people improve their quality of life, from savings to credit to insurance, or even we want even for people to go even to investments. Okay. So these developments were mainly attributed to the key milestones that were accomplished in collaboration with the industry. I think every one of us know already or knows already PesoNet, InstaPay. No, it's been with us since 2017 and 18 respectively. So I don't want to go into that. But what I want to share with you now is two, I think, exciting and I think very useful for you digital payment streams. One is the QRPH. So this enabled merchant payments. This was developed for the adoption of an interoperable common QR code which may be scanned and interpreted by any participating bank or non-bank electronic money issuer to facilitate customers' requests for fund transfers and payments. Given such feature, QR can be used for person-to-person or P2P transfers and person-to-merchant or P2M payments through the InstaPay rail. So what this means is that if previously, I don't know, I think many of you here are as young as I am. So if you can still remember the time when you go to a department store, you see more than five POS, and then you will be asked by the cashier, what's your credit card? You say this bank, and then they will have to look for the POS for that card company. So you have can you imagine the inefficiency and the very poor customer experience that gives us? And now, so that was solved, right, with interoperability of credit cards. And then QR code was introduced. And then you now again see different QR codes popping up like mushrooms. So, trying to repeat the same success as we had with the credit card interoperability, we now have a QR code standard, and that's for QRPH. So what does that mean for those of you with point of sale operations, like if you're a retailer or you collect directly from individual customers, then you can only use or sign an agreement, a merchant agreement, with at least one bank. No? Well, if you want two, that's your choice. But you need at least one bank. So you don't need 10 to sign up merchant agreements with 10 banks. It's very difficult to manage all these 10 agreements and monitor your liquidity in each of those accounts. So now you can only make do with one. And that same principle we brought over, and we have now to bills payments, and now we have bills pay PH. So what does this mean? If your utility, meaning previously, when you're a customer, all right. So you let's say you have you bought insurance with this company, or you have a credit card with that company, and then your bank is Bank A, and the insurer's card is Bank B, and you're not able to pay. Therefore, what will you do? You will now resort to alternative means, mostly physical, no, cash or check. Or if you have too much time on your hands, you can choose to open an account in the bank where your insurer maintains their accounts. So it happens that a person who only needs maybe one or two bank accounts ends up with having like five, and you have to maintain all those. Otherwise, you'll be charged with for going below minimum. So trying to repeat the success of the QRPH for merchant payments, we brought this over to bills payment. Meaning, I bank with my favorite bank is Bank A, and my credit card is in Bank B, my insurance policy is in Bank C, my what else? What else do we? Ah, my utility, my electric, water in banks D, E. No problem, because as a customer of Bank A, I can pay all of those billers who are in the system. As we speak, my last update was in December, and we just launched in November. We launched with about 470 billers in the system. Now I got an update that well, it's not really hot anymore because this number was still based in late December, but it's already over 1,400 billers there. So most likely your insurer, your credit card, your utilities, and etc. will all be there. So as an individual or even as a corporate, you can use your account to pay those bills. So you don't have to maintain several accounts. So what we're working with the billers is that for them to perhaps send us bills, either paper if you want, or preferably maybe email or digital, electronic, and then have the QRPH code on that bill so that us busy customers will just open email, and then we just scan that QRPH, and then we're done. Okay, then we authorize that, then we're done. So that's for the bills pay. Now, focusing on priority use cases, based on evidence from a national diagnostic study conducted together with the Better Than Cash Alliance, we determined 5 priority use cases that cover majority of the retail payment transactions in the country. These are merchants, QRPay, utility, which is bills payment, supplier payments, medyo coming soon. Remittances, we have that. Social benefits disbursements, we have that. Now, why are these 5 important? Because these account for 87% of retail transactions in the country. So you cover this, you cover almost all. But the sad fact is that only 29% of those that are being done digitally. No, it's such a big volume for retail payments, and yet only 29% are being done digitally. So, in collaboration with the payments industry, the BSP has been working to launch further digital payment streams that are expected to support and complement the digital transformation of the country, ultimately bringing its benefits to more Filipinos. On my next slide, I would like to cover the opportunities for increasing digital payments uptake. So as you know, despite the significant progress made in digital payments in recent years, BSP recognizes that there is still a need to further develop an inclusive digital payments landscape in the Philippines. So, in the interest of time, I'll just go directly to, I think, things that are of interest to the audience. I've already covered merchant payments, right? So that could bring you a lot of efficiency. Your customers need only have one QRPH code, and then customers, regardless of what banks or non-bank electronic money issuer they are with, can pay. So now what's exciting that's coming soon, and I see Dennis here, but Dennis is not on the PesoNet SteerCo. But anyway, is the supplier payments, because okay, right now some people think that, oh, okay, so I can now pay my suppliers using PesoNet. Okay, except that it is probably not complete yet or not fully uh, appropriate. Why? Corporates are telling me, when the payee receives payment, they have to know what is being paid, for which transaction that payment is being made for. Because you have to post that and update your receivables accordingly. So if the payment information accompany the payment transaction, and then you have, well, it's kind of happy problem because the funds are with you, but you cannot post it, and you cannot use it because you might even have to return it. So you just suspense it there, no? So we are working with supporting the Philippine Payments Management Incorporated and PesoNet Steering Committee to provide PesoNet service wherein you can put the payment information together with in the payment message. So when you receive a payment, you know what is being paid. There is a reference number. It could refer to a batch of invoice numbers. It could refer to specific invoice numbers. But at least there is indicators there. There's data there for you to process. Okay, and that could help enable the supplier payments. But then, talking to corporates that we regularly consult with, our stakeholders group, that is not enough. Because, meaning that's still not enough for them to totally abandon checks. So I asked them why. Well, they tell me that, current regulation, we're required to keep the OR, and I think also the invoices for a period of 5 years. So that piece of paper is very important to us. Otherwise, we couldn't claim deductions and we end up paying more taxes than we should be paying. So, in other words, what seems to be lacking there is probably an invoicing system that you can use for transactions. It's great that our colleagues from the BIR has launched the sales reporting or sales transaction reporting system, something like that. Great, because at least reporting could be digitalized and made easier for them and for you. But then the I'm in based on our consultations, really the breakthrough impact would be when you can digitalize the business transaction itself, the whole thing from PO and then DR, delivery receipt, and then invoice, and then payment, OR. So if you could digitalize that and it can be done such that it's interoperable regardless of your ERP, then straight through processing could be a reality, right? So the corporates are telling me that is gonna be impactful. And so, and then, with a system like that, of course, first of all, you don't need to encode repetitively, right? Kasi PO, you encode, and then DR, you encode, and then invoice, you check, and then so on. So this one, encode once, all right, at perhaps even at PR, all right, at the purchase requisition stage, and until it gets to PO, and then it won't be encoded anymore because it's like systems, ERPs are talking to each other. So we've been working on this with the BIR, and we may have also to to work with the DTI on this to make this e-invoicing a reality. And I guess I'll jump on my last slide. The others, of course, you can. Oh, there's one more thing. Direct debit. I was talking to some developers earlier, and there's a, it's the traditionally the payments are made using PDCs. No? So I understand there are advantages because it becomes a criminal liability when you default or when it's unfunded. But on the other hand, on the convenience side, in many countries, they already, in many jurisdictions, in fact, among the first to be digitalized is the direct debit. Okay, how does that work? So for utilities, insurance, credit card, I mean, customers' accounts that are due tomorrow, right? And the day after, and so on. So how this works is it can work both ways, batch or real time. You can batch this and give this to your bank, and your bank will now submit it for collection, where the funds will be coming from your customers from different banks. You get the picture. So it's like it begins with your customer providing you their mandate. Their mandate, don't worry, this is going to be digital. This won't be paper. Their mandate for you to debit their account. So you have a mandate, all right? So when you submit your banks the batch, make sure that you also have with it the mandate of the customer. So usually this will be in form of like a set of records, right? Sorry, kasi I also have an IT background. So anyway, this will be a set of, the collection transactions. You will give to your bank. Your bank will submit it to the system, the network. And then that debit transaction will go through the, to the customers' banks, and then you collect. In fact, worldwide, this is the most efficient way of collecting bills from customers. So that said, I hope that could address this direct debit could address not only the concerns on customers forgetting to pay for utilities, credit cards, but also for like developers, especially after we work on some maybe incentive for the customers to not revoke the mandate unilaterally, no? And if we could make it such that that mandate is a legal commitment to honor the payments, then if there are problems, then we will work out. But then if anything requires legislation, medyo ano yan eh. Ano ba average natin, Commissioner? 8 years yata eh, no? On the average. Pero hopefully that's I think it's becoming shorter, no? The turnaround time from proposal to law. But when I was looking at this many years back, the average is 8. But I think it has changed. Fingers crossed. So I won't go much into the infrastructure and the standards. I think there's nothing new there. The other thing is the on standards. You've heard of the Executive Order 170, right? And now the Digital Payments Bill is also with the, I understand, I think with the Senate now. I may be wrong, but the thing is, it mandates government to support or to give you the option of being paid digitally, of you paying government digitally. So we're working on that since many businesses have many transactions with governments, and this will make it a lot easier for you when, for example, let's say the government agency adopts bills pay PH, right? So all the permits, fees, or even taxes need to pay. You can do so using the bills pay PH, and I think if Secretary Ivan would be here, I think he also knows what's going on there. So moving on to my, I think so. I think this is my last slide. So the BSP continues to coordinate with the industry and different government bodies with the aim of widening the reach of digital payments. As mentioned, BSP has been collaborating with BIR and perhaps to do it with the DTI on the e-invoicing project. We're also looking forward to the implementation of the automated fare collection system. You know, right now we enabled, we supported, or we're supporting Land Bank pilot the fare collections using EMV cards, no? your debit and credit card. So that's being piloted by Land Bank. So as soon as that passes the safety and prudential standards, then we will make that mainstream. So, in conclusion, the success in payment digitalization gained in recent years able to support the expansion of the Philippine digital economy, as well as aid in facilitating the economic activities even during the COVID-19 lockdowns. The challenge now is on sustaining the momentum and pushing the Philippines towards a higher growth trajectory in the new economy. BSP will do its part, but nonetheless, a whole of society approach is vital in ensuring that no one is left behind on this digital transformation journey. So let me then conclude by saying that fostering inclusive growth and pushing the digital Philippine economy to leap forward in the new normal entail a strong collaborative commitment and unified action among payment system stakeholders. On the supply side with Dennis here, and of course on the demand side with most of you who are here. And we can work towards a holistic digital transformation of the national payment system. As the Philippines continues its digital transformation journey, the BSP stands firm in its commitment to foster and enabling policy environments. That's our chief role. And a vibrant digital ecosystem that promotes safe and efficient delivery of digital financial services, thereby allowing more Filipinos to have meaningful participation in the digital economy. Delivering on such commitment will help the digital Philippine economy accelerate towards a more inclusive and sustainable growth path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Governor Mamerto Tangonan. In the interest of time, because the Deputy Governor will have to leave before we end the session, may we invite again Governor and our Chairman of the ICT Committee, our moderator for the day, Attorney Mark Goroseta. On stage, please, for the Q&A.
Sound check.
So, thank you, Bong. So again, I'm Mark Doriseta. I'm the managing partner of our firm, Doriseta Africa Cotton and Saavedra, and I'm the chairman of the ICT Committee of Phoenix. But for today, we'll have a special session with Deputy Governor Mertangonan, since I understand he has only 10 to 15 minutes remaining and he has another engagement. So, sir, thank you. Thank you for your time. And after this, we'll have, of course, Commissioner Lee from the SEC and Secretary Ivan Uy from the DICT. Then we'll have another panel session later. So I'll make this quick, 10 to 15 minutes, and probably I'll call one or two from the audience if you have any questions. But to start off, Deputy Governor, my first question perhaps is I wanted to ask first, due to my, I guess, professional experience and work, extensive work, no, for tech companies that are regulated by the BSP. And as you know, I'm suki in your office. Kinukulit ko parate, sir. And but for everyone's information, I'm sure you know, over the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen BSP actively opening up and closing licenses and or registrations such as digital banks. So 2010, we came up with regulations on that, but imposed a 5-year, 5 license limit shortly. Then we had electronic money issuers, which I understand, sir, there's a moratorium until December 2023. Then, of course, we have virtual asset service provider licenses, so VASPs. There's a moratorium on that until 2025. Now, of course, the BSP is actively licensing or regulating OPS or Operator Payment Systems licenses, 19 to present. Of course, you have the BSP now has the Sandbox license, which was released in 2022 to present. So, of course, all of these licenses and the platform offered has that we offer has significantly changed our digital economy, particularly during the pandemic up to present. So I assume many of the audience here are also holders of some of these licenses. So my question, Deputy Governor, is can you share to us from a high-level perspective how BSP developed these fintech-related licenses and how it monitors the market relevant to its opening up or restricting or closing new license applicants? And in case you might also want to add, what other tech or fintech verticals does the BSP look into regulating in the near future, Deputy Governor?
Thank you, Attorney Mark. So, as you know, BSP believes in innovation, and we support innovation because of the impact it can create in making lives much easier. Um, so we support it and we enable it. We provide a space where in this innovation could really touch the market and prove its promises that it does indeed bring the benefits that it purports to bring. That's on one side. On the other side, of course, we have a public to protect. So these are hard-earned people's money, and we don't want them, we don't want the system to be offering unsafe financial services or payments products. So we have to look at also the prudential side of it. So we balance that and we come up with this, we allow the innovation, we initially on a limited scale, like look at digital banks, 6 muna, right? So, and then the promise is financial inclusion, more people will start opening new accounts, and credit would be easier than how it's accessed right now. But still, it has to be in a sustainable way. So this we would love to see um, if if this business really does bring the benefits it promises. So that's why it's of course when it comes out to be it's really performing its role. Of course, it can be looked into to even like open it to any player. Same for the electronic money issuers. Right now there are around 50 electronic money issuers. But Attorney Mark, I would think that half of them are non-operating. So we don't want a scenario where you get a license to have something to resell. You know what I mean? So, hindi ganon. No. When you get a license, it means you have all the intention and the commitment to render your service. So, syempre, if you're not using the license, what you will revoke? Wala eh. No? And then so we start to limit it. But Attorney Mark, we provided exceptions.
Correct.
For those with we can get you in through what we call the sandbox, and learn approach. If you bring in a promising new business model,
Innovative.
yeah, innovative business model, if you are touching unserved or underserved a
Niche.
huge base, customer base, and then of course if the other one is if you have a new model, so we allow that. For vast piece, well, you can understand it's uh, again, the world on the is that there are many things that are hard to find out that are not as transparent as it is in with traditional finance. So we just have to put a gate. This is how, despite some of the large uh, crypto exchanges failed, the financial system remained unscathed. No, hardly any impact at all. So that's how we try to achieve the balance between supporting innovation and wanting to their benefits to be realized by the people and the businesses. But on the other hand, we have to always keep these innovations safe.
Thank you, Deputy Governor Mert, for that. We'd like to acknowledge, of course, the presence of Secretary Ivan Uy, who just arrived. Thank you, Secretary Ivan. So go back to Deputy Governor. Sir, for my next question, so it was clearly mentioned earlier that BSP has a BSP Digital Payments Transformation Roadmap 2020 to 2023. And it's the three pillars of the digital payment transformation that are identified. I took notes here. No? Number one, digital payment streams. Number two, digital finance infrastructure. And number three, digital governance standards. So to achieve all of this, the BSP roadmap identified how crucial interagency and stakeholders collaboration, as you stated in your, I think, last slide or second to the last slide. No? So, Deputy Governor, can you tell us, please, which collaborative initiatives are is your office particularly involved in, and how the private sector, such as Phoenix here, can particularly or can participate to contribute to the BSP's digital payments transformation roadmap, Deputy Governor?
Thank you, Attorney Mark. Well, one live collaboration we're doing now is uh, together with the Secretary Ivan's department, the ICT, because of the EO 170 and what is being contemplated in the digital payments bill. So the government, the ICT, is developing an app that now kind of integrates all the fragmented ways of collecting done by various government agencies. Like agency one will collect through this, agency two will collect through this, three, four, and so on. So very fragmented. So even the discovery by the public is very, very difficult. So I think the ICT is doing an e-gov, no? Wherein it's with one app, we download that app, and I think if plans push through, it's gonna be linked with our national ID, and then so we are parang single on. We're identified. We're not anonymous, and then we do our transaction. So you wanna get this permit, you wanna get that clearance, you wanna get that license, you wanna and all that, no? And then even the payment system will be interoperable, like what we are working to connect that to the Bills Pay PH, so that you don't have to be concerned about your bank being different than the government agency's bank, because you know it will work. There, we're also been collaborating with the BIR on the e-invoicing, and we may have to also work with DTI, maybe three of us on that. And like Attorney Mark said, previously, the cooperatives are kind of like left out. There's a growing network of interconnected accounts, right?
Right.
but the cooperatives are left out of that. So we're collaborating with the CDA, Cooperative Development Authority, so that the secondary or even tertiary cooperatives can become EMIs. In collaboration with them, we have issued the amendments to the electronic money issuer regulation, allowing these cooperatives, as long as they're approved by CDA, to become part of the national payment system. So these are just an example of some of the past and also live collaborations going on.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. For my last question before I pass it to the audience, no. This one is very seg a bit, Deputy Governor. So I understand that the BSP is leading just correct me if I'm wrong, Deputy Governor, leading a pilot for a project called CBDCPH, which, like many central banks across the world, is aimed to assess the impact of central bank digital currencies as a financial tool for the country's economy and monetary policy. So I also understand that there's some level of central bank collaboration that globally relating to this technology. So if you can, Gov, can you share to us, if any, the initial results of this pilot and how does of course, as you mentioned, the market volatility that has plagued the crypto world, the crypto economy in the last quarter of 2022 affected the CBDC project or rollout in the Philippines or with other central banks abroad, Deputy Gov?
Thank you, Attorney Mark. Thank you very much for bringing this up, the CBDC PH. This is a project that we are currently working on with uh, 7 participating financial institutions and about 9 observers to learn and see how everyone could benefit from CBDC. Now, unlike crypto currency, by the way, my governor will scold me if I call it currency because it's not.
Correct.
It's a virtual asset. Okay, set currency. So um, for CBDC, these are issued by the central bank. So these are backed by the central bank and by the republic. So just like money, it is money, but it's really very transparent. The valuation is, I mean, everyone can understand it, and it's stable. So now, where we see that such innovation really can bring about the benefits is in wholesale payments, especially for liquidity management, for settlements of financial market infrastructure,
Nice.
and for um, there's another purpose that I couldn't remember. But so where we are right now is we together with the participating financial institutions have looked at the various have assessed the various pilots done by other central banks and also looked at various products. And we have more or less narrowed our selection to 2 options. No? Sorry, I cannot yet disclose at this time, but there are 2 options. And right now, we are working with the participating financial institutions to work out an assessment framework in order to choose one. Once we chose one, we would then have to, all 8 of us, BSP and 7 participating financial institutions, have to support this CBDC platform. And we would now be initially using it, testing it using dummy money. And if everything goes well, we'll move into real money. So, but the main purpose, Attorney Mark, just so to ground the expectations of our friends here, uh, the main uh, objective of this project is really capacity building. Um, capacity for the BSP to, be able to perform its currency management role, from creating, minting, issuing, all the way to retirement, no? And the other transactions that go in between. That we have we have a reliable technology, the organization is capable of, ensure safety and efficiency of this digital currency. And then, if it becomes clearer to the participants that the promises could indeed be delivered, then we will mainstream. And then all the financial institutions, the banks, could use it. So ano muna tayo, wholesale. We're not going into retail yet, no? It's because we have a maturing digital payments system. So what retail CBDC can do, your InstaPay and PesoNet, especially when all of these no digital payment streams are in place, can also do. Um, but then there are developments also in the horizon that may seem to suggest that it it can be attractive. And what are these? First is the purpose-based money. The government spends a huge budget for social subsidies, right? 4Ps, farmers, fisher folks, senior citizen, PWD, name it. So, but then, of course, government wants to make sure that these are the assistance are used for the intended purpose, like 4Ps, health, education, no? Because you want to protect your human capital. So, so dapat it shouldn't be able to be used for ano, di ba? Sorry na lang if there's among of us here who belong to, like, say, the tobacco industry or the alcohol industry. But you wouldn't want these funds to be used for that purpose, no? Okay lang naman yun, but you make your own money, no? Then you can spend for that. But not the government subsidies. So, there are trials where you can purpose base the CBDC. All right? So when you go to a merchant, you buy a beer, eh, it won't be able to pay, no? But if you buy a book,
Makes sense.
you buy school supplies, you go to a pharmacy, you buy medicines, it will work. All right? You go to casino, it won't work, no? So that's one. That's one. Second is the offline payments. I know Secretary Ivan. Thank you very much. Starlink seems to be low Earth orbit satellite-based internet access to become a reality. No, so maybe we could digitally cover the whole nation, but absent that, no. Again, we saw in some jurisdictions where retail CBDCs can be used for offline payments. So let's say you're in an island, no, and then you create an ecosystem there. All of you use cards, and perhaps the merchants. Sana naman yung merchants have smartphones, but the smartphones don't have to be connected. No, it uses NFC technology. No, so ano lang, you tap the card. I've seen this work, no, in some jurisdictions. To the merchant, let's say the sari-sari there or palengke there, they have, sana naman may smartphones, no? May smartphone, and then, kunwari, yung gulay na binibili mo, 700 pesos. So, if you tap your card close to it, no? Dapat ano yan, dapat magkapatong. Ano, you're debited, your card, the chip in your card is debited by 700, and the wallet of the merchant gets credited by 700. So ganon. And then, in that case, hindi na rin tayo mahihirapan to bring uh, the currencies that they need in those GDA, no? Geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. Kasi, when you go to some small islands, you see the economy. Uh, I don't know if I should be telling this to you, but uh, sorry pero yung paper, yung banknotes, parang ayaw mo na hawakan eh. Kasi talagang masyado na siyang experience, no? Parang begging for retirement na. No?
Masyado serious.
Marami na siyang pinagdaanan sa
Kanan.
buhay. Kaya, we have a clean note policy at the BSP. Now, we want all of you, even our marginalized kababayans, to be, proud, certain of the value of their cash. So, it might help us, and it might help you, it might help, people. And that could be also additional customers for you, right? They're able to make a transaction.
Thank you. Very clear position on CBDC. At this point, yeah, I'll now ask the audience, of course, our members from Phoenix members, to ask question. Probably one lang, kasi may nag-raise na. And yeah, one or two questions from our, for any executive here, guest. So, you have Mr. Jeng Pascual.
Good morning, Deputy Governor.
Morning, Jeng.
And our dear Secretary and Commissioner Lee. My question is direct to you, but can also be referred to later by the good Secretary and Commissioner. I think we all know or heard that I think 2 weeks ago the Supreme Court issued an order nullifying 2014 circulars of the BIR and the SEC in terms of information to be disclosed regarding investors. And we know that data availability is a key enabler for digitalization. So I will not dwell on that decision, but more your thoughts on what is the proper balance between data availability and data security or privacy, because we know that you can only push digitalization if you have the data. And maybe from the BSP's perspective, what do we expect as, or what regulations are already in place, or should we expect that will give assurance that data will be protected? Because that was the main reason the Supreme Court nullified the circulars, was because there was no assurance that data will be used within the stated purpose. Thank you, Deputy Governor.
Thank you very much, Jeng. What I know about that is born from our experience with supporting another innovation, called the open finance. So in open finance, the promise is that it increases your access to financial services because data could easily be interchanged between, let's say, the data that your bank collects and then the data that a credit provider requires or an insurer requires, and so on. It's like portability. Now, what causes that is the key principle. What underpins that is the key principle that the data is owned by the customer. So the customer has the right, and no one can prevent him or her from sharing that his or her data anyway with another provider. No, kasi right now, of course, where we come, if the financial institution collected those data and performing transactions with the financial institution, therefore enriching the quality of the data. Well, the ownership of that data is somewhat gray, and some financial institutions think it's theirs. So in open finance, it is made clear that that data does not belong to anyone else but the customer. And since he is the owner of the data, he or she can choose to share it with whomever in the financial system. No, I don't know if outside. So that's the essence more or less of open finance, uh, and I think that is also consistent and aligned and born out of the Data Privacy Act. That really the owner of that data is none other than the customer himself.
Thank you, DepCo. I think that's what I'm part of the OFOC, of the Open Finance Oversight
I think you're
Committee.
part of that, right?
Yes, so Jeng, we're formulating the policies and standards. Actually, the BSP Open Finance Oversight Committee, we're starting DepGov our pilot for the open finance to hopefully this financial institution to have that common API, to be able to really share supposedly the data, which is supposedly owned by the owner of the data. So that's the target of the BSP. So at this point, yes,
Okay yun,
yeah.
attorney, kasi, once you enable that, say, okay, you keep your accounts with this financial institution, and so this financial institution knows you very well, and then, but you're not that happy with its credit products.
Right.
Now, then the next financial institution offers a very competitive credit products with, an offer that you like. Oh, so we should be able to get cheaper and better quality credit products than what is being offered to us by the banks. Oh, sorry, by the financial institutions
Institutions
we
and
work with.
DPPs. Okay, at this point, I think our time is up with Deputy Governor. So, Deputy Governor, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Can we give Deputy Governor a round of applause? At this point, can we call the Phoenix officers
Yeah,
first for a picture?
Deputy Governor Lee, we'd like to invite our License Director Zondi Garcia and my co-vice chair of ICT, Adrian, to please join us on stage as we give the token of appreciation to our speaker. Thank you again. Let's give our speaker another applause. Okay, so let's move on to our second speaker. Our next speaker is Secretary Ivan John Uy. He has an extensive career in ICT industry and in public service. He specializes in information technology and its impact on law, justice, and government institutions. He was a Hubert Humphrey Fellow under the Fulbright program in the University of Minnesota and a graduate of the College of Law from the University of the Philippines. As a public servant, Secretary Uy served as chairman of the Commission of Information and Communications Technology, the predecessor of the Department of Information and Communications Technology. From 2011 to 2016, he led the formation of the Philippine Digital Strategy. He also served as Information Technology Officer of the judicial responsible for the overall technology strategy and implementation of the courts. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the stage Secretary Ivan Uy.
Thank you very much, Bong, for that very generous introduction. I'd like to, well, of course, greet my earlier speaker, Deputy Governor Mamerto Tangkuban. Um, he's been a very strong partner of the DICT in pushing for digital payments. Of course, the next speaker, SCC Commissioner Kelvin Lee, also an ICT champion in the Securities and Exchange Commission. Um,
Phoenix President, Mr. Wilson Tan, and I see some people I know in the room. Alexon. A pleasant morning, or is it noon, to everyone. To all our friends in the public sector, private sector, colleagues in the ICT arena, uh, pleasant afternoon. The Department of Communications Technology aims to maximize the full potential of ICT in fostering sustainable growth and development through digital transformation. Particularly, we are focusing on how digitalization and the institution of better governance measures could result in better public services and rebuilding the economy. Thankfully, our host today, the Financial Executives Institution of the Philippines, along with all our fellow agencies and industry partners, are gathered today to show your unyielding dedication to serving the people. We recognize that building trust in the government is an integral part and proactive step in meeting the President's directive to strengthen Philippine e-governance efforts. To this end, the DICT has been working on various fronts to harmonize and modernize public service and empower our citizens through connectivity. We shall continue implementing solutions focused on enabling e-governance and promoting technological innovation among many other undertakings to uplift the state of our nation. The DICT continues to push for the enactment of the e-governance bill, which has recently passed first reading and is now second reading in the lower house. This bill is intended to transform governance to one that is digital, reduce, if not eliminate, red tape and bureaucratic inefficiencies. As the Secretary of ICT, I want to emphasize that digitalization and e-governance work hand in hand to maximize efficiency and to eliminate long lines in the public's transactions with government. In line with this, we were able to pilot the launch of the e-local government system, or the ELGU, in partnership with the Department of Interior and Local Government to implement an end-to-end system that not only tackles business permits, licenses, clearances, real property taxes, business taxes, the civil registry, and many other regulatory requirements of local governments. What we do is to get rid of all the long lines that we all experience whenever we transact with government. And we want to push that of my motto for the past several years. Instead of getting in line, get online. In addition to this, our goal is to help our partner agencies promote innovation by building robust and nationally encompassing ICT infrastructure, making digital opportunities readily available to our local communities, especially in the geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas. This will also empower our local and national leaders as they continue to trailblaze digital governance. With that, I think it would be more interesting if we have more questions and answers so that we can answer direct to the point of your concerns. So thank you again for all your presence, and we hope for a productive exchange of ideas here today. We look forward to the insights that this platform has always brought in our collective pursuit for Philippine e-governance. As ever, we hope for everyone's active participation in our country's digital transformation journey. Thank you very much.
We invite Attorney Mark to please join us on stage. We will proceed with the Q&A with the Secretary.
Okay, so we'll revise the program. So we'll have this one-on-one with, of course, Secretary who is very busy. So Secretary Uy, I just have like, again, thank you for being here, for being very suki for all of my requests, no? For, of course, to really also inform the private sector, the plans and initiatives of the ICT and this government. So Secretary Uy, for my first question, I have three questions and I'll direct the mic to the floor later. Secretary Uy, we understand that improving Philippines' digital infrastructure is one of the current administration's top priorities in its Build Better More program, which capitalizes and continues on the prior administration's Build program. So of course, digital infra can be a myriad of things happening all at once, such as the ICT's cloud first policy, I understand, which promotes cloud computing as the preferred technology for government admin and the delivery of government services. Next would be activity through incentivizing licensing more tower or satellite-based technology and communications, namely Starlink, and rolling out the national broadband plan. So I'm sure there's more on your plate and on the DICT's pipeline. But the ICT Secretary, kindly help us understand what's the ICT strategy and timeline in terms of laying out all of these projects. Which projects take priority, or in deal terms, which ones does the DICT identify as conditions precedent to improving our Philippine digital infrastructure?
Conditions have already been set forth. For instance, the legislation that liberalizes the Public Service Act, so allowing for more investments to come into the country. Our common tower policy that's already been put in place that is intended to accelerate and build capitalization for our telcos to be able to deploy, because when with our common tower policy, what has been happening are the telcos where they had so much of their capital locked in to those towers have now been able to monetize them by selling them to tower companies. So suddenly we're able to solve the capitalization issues in terms of building, deploying connectivity, because they can now use these newfound funds in order to expand for the telcos. In the meantime, new technologies are coming in, like as was mentioned by Deputy Governor Tangonan, low Earth orbit satellites coming in that significantly brings down the cost of satellite connectivity, portability, reliability, low latency, and many other um, advantages. Of course, this technology is ideal in certain locations. It's not for all. For instance, there's really no advantage to using it in the urban areas where you have fiber optic connectivity. However, in the outlying areas, the islands, the remote islands, the mountainous regions where it does not make business sense being out very expensive fiber optic, either submarine or terrestrial, in order to connect them because of the low purchasing power, the low population in those areas. So with that, satellite, especially this low Earth orbit system, apparently seems to be a very good technology in order to adopt it. So these new technologies can significantly accelerate our connectivity and bringing into fold the level of connectivity that we want to see if we want to bring the country to upper middle income status. And so that needs to be put in place before we can even deploy significant e-governance solutions. Because if there's no connectivity, there's no, you cannot deploy anything.
Correct.
So the apps will follow, the apps, the services, the goods, all of those will follow. But while we're deploying the connectivity, we're not waiting for the connectivity to be there before we develop those. So we're in developing them as we go along.
In parallel.
Yes, so that by the time most of the connections are out there. Then we also have the applications that will run in those systems. What the deputy governor earlier Marcos mentioned, digital banking. Current as of today, 50% of the Philippine population are unbanked. They do not own bank accounts. Half of our population. So with connectivity, uh, and then we deploy our e-government solutions that includes them opening digital wallets, digital bank accounts, and digital payment systems, whether both ways, no? To either send them their social amelioration packages for peace, assistance for farmers to buy seeds, to buy fertilizers, to buy fishing nets, and so on. Or for them to transact with government when they have to pay their dues, their GSIS, SSS, Pag-ibig, PhilHealth, and all of those other transactions. So this will create a lot of economic synergy because now the remaining percent unbanked, I think, could be reduced significantly. Because if we deploy digital banking to them where they don't even need to maintain any balance, then we can bring financial inclusivity to those sectors that have never participated in our economy. And we see this as a very key element in bringing about our economic development. Correct.
Thank you, Sec Uy. So like Secretary, because like I think I'll go back to Starlink again, as mentioned earlier. I had the pleasure of like speaking or talking to top conglomerates here in the same hotel. I think last week, basically from Ayala Corp, JG Summit, Video Capital, and even advisors from PwC. Who all noted that tower deals are particularly hot in the M&A sector. No? So it thus seems that the private sector is very much in a tight race with respect to the communications infrastructure of the country. So like, well, I don't know if it's controversial, but how does the DICT factor these private market conditions on its Philippine tech roadmap? Meaning, out of curiosity, Secretary Uy, do you see satellite-based, I'm sure you mentioned it a bit earlier, but do you see satellite-based communications tech infrastructure in the future to outrival tower-based communications infrastructure, or it will be playing the space side by side?
They will be complementary.
Correct.
For instance, those satellite-based communications will still have to rely on our fiber optic
Okay.
because that's where the backhaul is. What the satellite does, the satellite are not actually backhaul connection. No? They're middle mile. So wherever the islands are, when they throw the data up to the satellite, it doesn't go to the rest of the world. It has to fall back to Earth and land on an Earth station in the Philippines that has the fiber
Correct.
optic that transmits now through our gateways. So actually, the satellite providers that is coming in will provide increased business
Correct.
to all our local telco providers. So they're not competing; they will be complementary.
Complementary. Very clear. Thank you, Secretary Uy. Now I'll shift a bit before I pass the mic to the audience for 1 to 2 questions. Secretary Uy, because of our rapidly growing digital economy, it is expected, it's expected for many bad actors to also take advantage of digital tools for their own malicious benefit, syempre. We've seen this problem proliferate in the pandemic, particularly in the area of data privacy and cybersecurity. We understand that the DICT is presently crafting correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Uy, a new national cybersecurity plan, initially developed in 2017 and updated in 2021 to address more complex threats, and that the DICT targets to launch this on May 2023. We also understand that this is a multifaceted and involves not just the public and private sector, but also aligning with international standards and guidelines. No? So my question, Secretary, is how does the DICT conduct the planning and development for this national cybersecurity plan updates. And I understand these begins with assessment surveys, but can you give us a more color on the process of this, and for us in the private sector, how can we contribute to the DICT's efforts on this matter?
Well, it's twofold. No? We're dealing with, on one hand, cybersecurity, which is the protection of our digital infrastructure. And these are addressed in many of our sectoral representatives, whether they're into telecommunications, into the banking and finance, energy, transportation, and so on. On the other hand, we are dealing also with the increase in cyber crimes.
Cybercrime.
Yes, in the cybercrime aspect, we are addressing a lot of issues, fraud, using the technology, whether it's SMS or the social media platforms. There's an increased um, presence, no, of cybercrime actors that has permeated all across the different platforms. And one of the interventions that we've actually done, which was actually the first law that the president has signed, was a SIM card registration law.
Correct.
And that was a first step because that effectively cut off one medium where the cyber criminals have been operating with, with impunity. So if you would notice today, before the SIM card registration law was passed, how many texts do you receive per day? I on the average would receive about 7 or 8 per day. After the law was passed, I'm down to 1 or 2. So just by enacting that law, it has already cut down by several 100% the exposure of the public on this platform. Once it's fully implemented, we'd expect that we would be able to solve the scam issues with respect to utilizing the mobile phones for text scams. I'm sure they will now move to a new platform. And in fact, they are. They are. So we're seeing that also coming out. And we're currently developing our plans in addressing those other platforms where they're using. Uh, so in terms of our cybersecurity plan, which is both on the cyber defense side as well as on addressing the cybercrime aspect, we're working with a lot of our allies and our partners all over the world. Uh, Many of the different countries that have very strong cybersecurity experience are actually sharing their data and their expertise with us. We have been deploying people to train in those areas. What's significant is we need to build more cybersecurity expertise in country. The world has a big demand for cybersecurity experts. 2 million jobs out there for cybersecurity. And one of the reasons why we have this big demand was during the pandemic when there was a sudden shift from brick and mortar into the digital space. Everybody shifted and ported their system on cloud or on many of the digital platforms without really considering the cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Because the pandemic, they needed really to just move, move either that or their business shuts down. So they move. So now they move. Criminals, the cyber threat actors have found a golden opportunity. That there's so many digital platforms out there that are not secure. So there is a strong demand. And in the Philippines, we want to deploy those headcounts. But in order to do so, we need to build up our internal capacity and build up our labor force on that. And we're doing that by training, upscaling our cybersecurity professionals. Uh, with our population, we have only about 100 100 or more CISSPs certified, in
100. 100.
about 100. And with that 100, you know how many are in country? 20.
My goodness.
The 80 are employed abroad, Filipinos. Compare that to Singapore, they have more than 2,000 CISSPs. So my goal really is, if we cannot stop them, and we don't want to stop them from seeking employment abroad, because that also brings revenues back to the Philippines, we just have to build the supply more. And I'm targeting this year, if we can produce maybe 5,000 CISSPs, and then in the coming years, rack it up. I'd like to see, you know, tens and tens of thousands of cybersecurity professionals that are produced in the Philippines. And we have no issues with respect to near hire. We have a lot of IT graduates, computer science graduates, but they are mostly trained in coding, in IT management. So these are near hires. Through a 3 to 6 month course on cybersecurity, they can be brought up to speed very quickly, and they can be hired very quickly. We have the course contents. We have the um, our friends, even the providers, no, whether these are commercial providers, have opened up their courses to help us build up that kind of capacity. So we just need to get more people to that ecosystem, so to
Very
speak.
interesting. Thank you, Secretary. I guess for those watching via Facebook and YouTube, no, you know already what profession that you could consider, which is very much in demand in the next one, 2, 3, 5 years. Cyber security, 20 lang dito. Probably I should also consider changing career. So like at this point, Secretary, if you'd allow me, we'll have our audience Phoenix members ask questions and also our executive guests here. Yes, Phoenix member.
Yeah, hi, sir. Davao Cable. Just to tie back to infrastructure a little bit. Countryside connectivity is a little close to my heart, and I just want to know what the DICT's plans are for the increased rollout in the provinces now. We have laws like A 10929, which is supposed to help stimulate that. And just recently, Congressman Salceda filed the Rural Wired Connectivity Act, which is also supposed to facilitate that. Maybe there are some things in the pipeline that'll be a little bit faster than filing a new law that might be there that perhaps we can hear about.
Well, we're working, for instance, with ARTA, because one of the big challenges in our rollout of connectivity are really the local governments. Instead of, there are many local governments that welcome, and they bend over backwards in order to accommodate the connectivity that we want to put in place. But there are some that would put in a huge roadblocks. Either they sit on the permits, on the licensing, and forever, no, it takes them forever in order to approve some of those. In others, the challenge would be with the electric cooperatives, because the co-ops have already the posts connected, and in order to save, many of the telco will need to put their lines on those posts, and many of the electric cooperatives ask for exorbitant sums in order for them to be allowed to put in those connectivity. So, so those are the challenges, and I think each and every citizen needs to work on their local executives. Been pushing ICT councils in many of the municipalities, work with them to ensure that these roadblocks that have been put in place will be removed. In the meantime, on the national level, we're working with the Anti-Red Tape Authority in putting some teeth that, you know, if these permits and licenses are not being approved at a certain period of time, we'll just go ahead and put it up. Secondly, we've deployed the common tower policy, but it hasn't trickled down to the common pole policy. So when you go to the local governments, you would see, there's a pole of PLDT, a pole of Globe, a pole of Dito, and they're all right next to each other.
Correct.
So I'm working out how we will be able to reconcile that and come up with just a single poll where all of them can be hosted together. But at the same time, we need to be very careful that we do not create a monopoly. Meaning, because if we insist on a single poll, whoever has put the first poll there, nobody else will be allowed to put any more polls. Then this one will now dictate the price on how much they want for co-locating the polls. So we need to strike those balances. But those are some of the challenges. Many local governments have even proposed to the DICT that they're willing to fund the local connectivity. We just give them the bandwidth and they're willing to. So these are, of course, LGUs that have more money. Ang kawawa are the LGUs that really come from really poor sectors. So that's where we would like to concentrate our efforts in bringing that connectivity there. And if we cannot do it through fiber optic because it's too costly, then we'll have to use other means like satellite technology.
Makes a lot of sense. There's common tower and common pole pala, Secretary. No? Common pole, isang pole. Tama naman. You have any other question from the audience, please? Audience for, yes, Bong?
Hello. Mr. Secretary, my question is, we have been talking about ease of doing business. We've been talking about digital transformation. There's a lot of innovation and payments. But, there's one agency in government that I think we were not able to, made significant through in terms of digitalization, simply because they're still paper-based. And I'm talking about commission and audit. I think a lot of us have experienced when we go through COA, not just private sector, but government, despite all the digitalization effort, when it hits COA, it's still paper-based. What are your thoughts on this observation?
Well, the good news there is that the chairman of COA now was the chairman of NTC, National Telecommunications Commission, which was an attached agency of the DICT. And I've always had a very good working relationship with Chairman Liel Cordoba. So we are actually working on how we can digitally transform the Commission on Audit. That's a big job to do. But we will be taking low-hanging fruits in that sector. So, for instance, what we'd like to start off with is perhaps address the digital payment side. Um, if we're able to do digital payments for all government transactions, then what concerns COA is whether the money actually goes directly to the treasury or not. So if we are able to work with the BIR, work with the Department of Budget and Management, work with the Bank Central and the Bureau of Treasury and COA to come out, let's say, the digital receipts system, where once payment is done, the digital receipt is issued and it's immediately registered with COA. COA can have visibility that, these payments are coming in and it's going straight to the treasury, and everybody has visibility on that. What's been happening, especially with the paper receipts, I don't know if you're familiar, is that there's a lot of leakage when it comes to cash transactions. A lot of the funds that are being paid to government in cash does not end up in the treasury. Only a portion of that ends in the treasury, and they fool around with the receipt. in order to do that. Either they come out with fake or double printing of those receipts so that those are not accounted for, or any other rather innovative ways of uh, um, filtering some of those cash. So we see that often in government. That's why whenever you transact with government and they say that there is online payments, what's happening is it's online payment on their physical location. So you still have to go there. You still have to go there, right? And then you now do your online payment there. And because they don't like online payments, all they have to do is pull the plug and tell you it's offline. So it's cash. So we now have to do cash because it's online. And that's what we want to address. Because if we want to really do online payment, you should be able to pay anywhere, anytime. So you don't have to physically be here. You can pay from your home, you can pay from the beach, you can pay in the airport, wherever you are, through your mobile platform. You should be able to do that. Then that now removes you from having to be face to face transacting your business. Because once you move face to face transaction in government transactions, you remove discretion. And when you remove discretion, you reduce corruption. So that's what we're trying to do. I won't go into too many details. Just feel it once we start deploying those systems.
Thank you, Secretary Uy. I think that's all the time we have with Secretary Uy at this point. Let's give Secretary Uy a round of applause, please. Sir, thank you. Bong?
We'd like to invite again our licensed director, Zondi, and my co-chair for the ICT, Adrian, as we give Dari a token of appreciation. Let's give him another round of applause. Okay, so we're down to our last speaker for the day. We saved the best for last. Our next speaker, Mr. Kelvin Lester King Lee. He's a lawyer appointed Securities and Exchange Commission on January 25, 2019. He currently writes business law column for the Manila Times and lectures for various mandatory continuing legal education. He also lectures in corporate law and corporate governance at the Rizal Memorial College School of Law. He was elected as a senior fellow of the Lee School of Public Policy of the National University of Singapore. Attorney Lee is the supervising commissioner of the Markets and Securities Regulation Department, or MSRD, and is the Information Communications Technology Department head. Also spearheaded the establishment of the International Affairs and Protocol Division and Philippine Tech Innovation Office of the Commission. He is concurrently designated as the Vice Chairperson of the Islamic Finance Coordinated Forum, a member of the Executive Committee of the Personal Equity and Retirement Account for Interagency Board, a member of the Executive Committee of the Financial Stability Coordination Council, alternate representative to the Financial Inclusion Steering Committee, SEC representative to the Financial Sector Forum and its FinTech Committee, and SEC representative to the Capital Development Council. Entering the government service, Attorney Lee held positions as a partner in various Davao and Manila-based law firms. He began his legal career as an associate lawyer of the Yon Reina Montecielo Aponciaco, the columnist for the Sun Star Davao newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome Commissioner Kelvin Lee.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Sir Bong. That was actually the long version, no? And I apologize for that. Before I go to my script, no, they actually prepared, my staff prepared a script for me. I'd like to touch on some of the things that were asked just moments ago. For instance, first, the topic about the BIR case, meaning the removal, the voiding of the BIR regulations, no, and the attendant SEC regulations. We are looking at filing a motion for reconsideration in relation to that. We're just awaiting what the BIR will do. We're coordinating with the BIR. That was, for the record, that was more a BIR thing than an SEC thing. We just followed their their direction. Secondly, on the statement of the secretary, the good secretary, you know, in relation to some agencies having online payment, but it was still physical. I'd like to inform the secretary that we are actually fully online. No? That was one of the first things I worked on back in 2020 when the pandemic hit. I insisted that we create an online payment portal, and it happened around 6 months after we developed it. It is now called ePaysec, which I'll discuss that in a moment, no, with the slides. I'd also like to mention the discussion on the ODB and digital transformation that Sir Bong mentioned earlier. That has been something the chair and the other commissioners have been working on since 2019. So the topics here are things that have been top of mind for the commission, at least the current composition of the commission for a while now. So I'm happy to see that finally all that hard work kind of comes to fruition and all comes together today. No? And with that, I'll go to my discussion already. No? I have a working, my staff has prepared a speech for me, which I will try to read, but as others known or others who have heard me speak are fully aware, I tend to go off script, so I apologize if I tend to go off script. No? So anyway, Secretary Ivan Uy, DICT Secretary, to Deputy Governor Merto Tangonan, si Mertz of Deputy Governor BSP, Santan of the Phoenix President, Jeng, I call him the President Emeritus of Phoenix, Attorney Mark Goriseta, whom I work with extensively, Ma'am Zondi, whom I work with not only through Phoenix, but with the PSE, you know, Sir Bong, everyone else who's here, directors, officers of Phoenix, distinguished guests, everyone here present, good morning. Good afternoon. No, thank you for having me here to discuss the SEC's mandates and initiatives in technology, innovation, fintech, and digitalization. Next time, let me begin with a brief look at the different laws that drive the SEC's efforts. Now, this PowerPoint presentation is more of an overview, no? Because I'm aware that the SEC, among the agencies that are being discussed today, BSP, the ICT, and ourselves, we're the smaller agency, so I worry that not everyone is familiar with our mandate. So I just thought we'd point it out here. These are some of the laws that we deal with. In particular, you will notice that there is specific mention of the revised corporation code and securities regulation code. Those are some of the regulations in particular I deal with every day in light of the fintech side of my work as well as the capital market side of my work. No, I won't belabor this point. No, next slide, please. Now, I was asked to talk about technology and also the fintech side of things, and I just like to point out the overarching principles, our basic approach to innovation. If you recall, Deputy Governor Mert also mentioned that they are very open to innovation at the BSP, as are we at the SEC. No? So long as I sit there, I tend to make sure that innovation something remain open to as much as possible, so long as the law allows it. No? We want you see some of the principles that we follow on screen. In particular, financial integrity, investor protection. I'd like to emphasize that investor protection. The more important that is top of mind for the SEC. Now, we try to find a balance between the traditional financial system, of course, and innovation. Next slide, please. Now, at the core of our work is putting in place regulations that will enable innovation and stability. In a rapidly changing, evolving, shifting systems such as tech and, well, fintech, we acknowledge that no one size fits all. So we have some basic principles that we try to apply. Specifically, no one size fits all,
the traditional structure. It should usually inspire platform in a digitalized layer. It should be activity-based, principles-based approach, and it should be technology neutral, because obviously technology changes very quickly. No, so we focus on the principles-based as well. Now, next slide, please. We also acknowledge that there are many challenges and benefits that come from innovation. So we always have to consider the risks that come with it, vis-a-vis the opportunities. Sort of like what Deputy Governor Mert mentioned earlier, that we have to be very open to innovation, but at the same time, we have to be cognizant of all the issues that might come with some of these new innovations, some of the possible risks it could bring to financial stability, financial integrity. And so with that, next slide, please. So this is perhaps the key slide that a lot of you might want to see. These are some of the fintech initiatives and updates that the SEC is looking at very soon. We are looking to fine-tune the rules and regulations on digital asset offering and digital asset exchanges. If you recall, I think Attorney Mark is familiar with this. When I attended and gave a speech at the Blockchain Week last year, what happened was that I had a draft of the digital asset offering rules and digital asset exchange rules ready. It was actually on my desk and I was about to have it released for public dissemination and comment. But because of what happened with FTX, I instead announced on that same day, I'm pulling back, per the discussion with the Commission and back, we were pulling back that particular draft and we would not release it because we wanted to subject it to more scrutiny and more review. That is actually the subject of one of my meetings this afternoon, the digital asset offering rules. So I'm interested to know. I'd like to point out also that we have coming guidelines on registration and licensing of online lending platforms, which we are looking to have released originally Q1 2023 for public comment and dissemination. For those who are not familiar with online lending platforms, what has happened is that we issued a moratorium on new online lending platforms circa 2021. Late 2021, meaning no new online lending platforms or no new online lending apps would be allowed to operate until we lift that moratorium. The intention is once that new rules come into play, those new guidelines come into play, we will lift the moratorium and allow people to register already. In effect, what's going to happen is that it'll be a tertiary license. For those who are in the lending field, you will recall that there are two licenses currently. First license is for registration as a company. The secondary is for you to be operating as a lending company or financing company. The intention with this set of rules is to have a tertiary license that will allow you to conduct lending and financing operations online. So even the currently existing lending companies that have already OLPs, or online lending platforms existing, once these new rules come out, we will be requesting that you come in and then re-register. Now, of course, there will be incentive for you if you are already an existing form, because that will make it easier, obviously, because you've already been seen as hopefully with no issues. We're also looking at the implementing rules and regulations for the Financial Products and Services Consumer Protection Act, the FCPA. Why do I mention this? Because it was in the news a few weeks ago that we came up with a definition of cryptocurrency. To be honest, this is recorded by Attorney Mark, no? No, good. See, what happened was that live lang. Sige. Hopefully no one recorded. What happened there was that particular set of rules was really without me getting to see it, because I forget if I was in Bali or somewhere. I fly a lot because of my international affairs hat. And what happened there was that the remaining Commission and Bank chose to have it distributed for dissemination without me getting a last look at it. So when that came out and then I saw the draft, and I saw the news reportage in relation to that particular definition, I was a little uncomfortable with it. So I have requested that particular definition be revised, because to be honest, that was not the point of the financial FCPA IRR. The point of the FCPA IRR was in relation to our clawback power, meaning the SEC moving forward will now have the power to give back or to order the return of any investments or any funds that were subject of a scam. That was the purpose. It was not really to focus on digital assets, on cryptocurrencies or making cryptocurrencies ours, because there's already been an agreement, there's already a tacit agreement between the BSP and ourselves that there is a difference between virtual assets, money, payment, currencies itself is with them, securities and other digital assets that we consider the securities is ours. So that's the point that I want to make. I just can't say it publicly yet, meaning recorded, because that's still being fixed. But definitely that's something you should be aware of. And then our internal rules of procedure. That is something I've been working on for the last 2 years. We want to change the rules of procedure within the SEC. Anyway, next slide, see. So anyway, we've seen how regulation has affected the market in positive ways. Following these guidelines on crowdfunding, which we just issued, we have seen the launch of the first lending-based crowdfunding platform and the first equity-based crowdfunding platform. We also are home to a pioneer in Asia, the bonds.ph. This is the launch of the first digital ledger technology or blockchain distribution of retail treasury bonds. So we have been very innovative, and this goes back to my point earlier that I mentioned, that Deputy Governor mentioned also, innovation. The Philippine government, through entities like the BSP and the SEC and the DICT, is open to innovation. Next slide, please. I'd like to point out as well that we work a lot with other financial sector supervisors to coordinate efforts in relation to issues of matters of joint relevance, in particular fintech and digitalization. We also have an MOU law center to undertake joint research projects and capacity building. And you would be interested to know that the UP Law Center project is very interesting. Oh, sorry. Next slide, sorry. There. You're interested to know that the UP Law MOA, very interesting because it happened after the Professor Dicini came to see me one time in a courtesy call, and we were just shooting off ideas. And then it just molded and evolved to this. So I'm very happy about this. I'm looking forward to the first research that we'll be submitting to us for use very soon. Next slide, please. Some more updates. We are just to show you how relevant the SEC is in this particular field. We are part of the Global Financial Innovation Network. We've participated in different FinTech Alliance, Temasek Foundation, Phoenix events, UNODC events as either lecturers or speakers or resource persons. I was even invited to speak by AIM. I've recently been invited to consulted by the Center for Finance, Technology, and Entrepreneurship and the Singapore Management University on their curriculum for blockchain and digital assets. What's my point of showing this? It tells you that the SEC is a major player when it comes to financial and digital assets, and we are how do we say? We are consulted very often in relation to this. Next slide, please. In fact, I'd like to point out as well that the Commission is part of the many fintech program cohorts of the KM Center for Alternative Finance. I understand the BSP also sits on that. So these are some of the projects that we named. In particular, it was this particular program that led us and inspired us to go with the PhiliFintech and to create the PhiliFintech Innovation Office, which I will talk about a little bit more later. Now, next slide, please. So let me share with you the more recent milestones when it comes to fintech, among others. For instance, last year I was invited as a panelist at the official launch of the Regulation Knowledge Exchange of the University of Cambridge. In one event, it was attended by Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. And I was sat panel with her, and we discussed how fintech, how digital assets can be helpful for financial inclusion. Now, aside from the RKE, the Regulation Knowledge Exchange, I'd like to point out also that there is a Spec Lab innovation project that the University of Cambridge has recently launched, which our people are also in. And I'm very happy to say that our people, our project, our team project at the SEC was actually finalized and shortlisted for possible funding by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we are very, very active in this space. Next slide. Now, and this is another money slide, I think, to pardon the term. I mentioned that the SEC has a designated office for fintech, which shows you how committed we are in this space. The PhiliFintech Innovation Office, which was launched in 2021, as I mentioned, is a product of our capacity building activities with the University of Cambridge. And it is that office now that is studying the possibility of issuing an open finance framework and a separate regulatory sandbox. There are other regulatory sandboxes we are looking at. They are recommending to me, but I'm not comfortable announcing those yet. But certainly this is the one that I think will be coming in the next few months. I've indicated to the PhiliFintech Innovation Office to start moving forward on this. I have a meeting this week on that as well. And if you're wondering why a lot of these updates and meetings are happening just this week, I was out for the last couple of weeks giving speeches in Bali and Paris and everywhere. So my life has been interesting but difficult, transportation-wise. Next slide, please. I'd also like to point out this. This is another example of one of our other sandboxes. That we approved the sandbox run of a stock trading partnership between a registered broker, which is AB Capital, and a payment service provider, GCash. So the goal of this is to make it readily available, to make AB Capital's online trading services readily available through the GCash app. It's supposed to help GCash's 71 million users to grow their funds and invest in local companies. And so if you have GCash, you can check it. It's the G Stocks PH. More people will be able to access it. More people will be able to access the Philippine Stock Exchange and the market through that particular app. Now, once again, since I'm not being recorded, I hope, I can let you know, without naming names, that there are at least 3 other entities that want to replicate this same model. So that tells you something. That tells you that there is a lot of interest in the capital markets of the Philippines and to try and open it up to the general public. Because not that many people currently have access to the Philippine stock. A lot of them find it difficult to get into it. Hopefully, by putting it in different payment platforms like GCash, among others, then it would be much easier for people to be able to trade online. At least that's the goal. I intend to have more sandbox these different entities. Now, why is this a sandbox? Because we're still testing to see how they will do. Because although I'm very confident in the technological prowess of these entities, we're a little worried about whether or not they can handle the volume. Don't forget, GCash has 71 million users. So there is the worry, of course, at the back of our heads that what if 71 million users use it all at the same time, or even a fraction of that? Would the GStock application within GCash be able to handle the volume? So that's why it's the sandbox method. No? Anyway, next slide, please. So aside from fintech, the Philippine Tech Roadmap also promotes digital transformation, as mentioned by the good secretary earlier. And the SEC is actively involved in it as well. No? We've been doing our digital transformation and technology modernization roadmap since 2019, as I mentioned. And we want to continue improving and moving on to the next stage. And these are some of the projects that we're moving on to. Now, these are the other upcoming projects that you might be interested to know about. Perhaps if you're interested to help us with those, I'd be happy to talk to you separately. Now, next slide, please. Now, those are the incoming initiatives. These are the current initiatives that are already in place. No? At least the numbers. No? I'm referring to, of course, to the different online payment platforms and the on suite of services that the SEC has, specifically the Electronic Simplified Processing Application for Registration of Companies, also known as eSpark. Then we have the one-day submission and electronic registration of companies, or OneSec. Now, that's the shortcut version of eSpark. If you recall, back in the heydays of 2018 and 2019, if you wanted to incorporate a company, it would take you a few months. With this system, which we forced out, by the way, and I'm very proud to say that this was developed in-house. We did not get anyone from outside for us. Internally, we had someone program and create this internally. We were able to knock down those months into 3 days under eSpark. You can register a company, have it ready for you within 3 days. And if you do it pro forma, meaning it's a decajon na company, a simple company that is very, very basic. You just use our platform, our template. You can have a company in minutes, even seconds kung mabilis ka mag-type. No, it really depends on how fast you type. And things they've been working on, and you'll notice the numbers, 200,000+ registered companies. I'd like to point out that before the pandemic, we were averaging around 2,000, and I'm not reading from the script now, sorry. Before the pandemic, we were averaging around 2,000 companies registered per month. Around the middle of the pandemic, 2021, when we launched this system, those numbers have risen. We now average 5,000 to 6,000 incorporations per month. That's an indication of 2 things. One, people are interested in doing business in the Philippines. They are very resilient and see good things. And secondly, we made it much, much easier for you to incorporate. This goes back to my point about ease of doing business that was raised by Sir Bong and the digital transformation of the SEC. There are other projects that we've done. This is the eFast, where submissions are largely made online for your GIS and AFS. We also have the SecCheck app, which was something I also instructed, which is our mobile app where you can get updates of the different things. No, next slide, please. And I'd just like to point out that generally people are happy with some of these things that we've done. No, like this is my favorite one. I actually saw this from a friend's reel. I don't know if you know reel. I'm sure you know reel. A friend's reel on Facebook. So I screen captured it, and then if I could post it without naming names. No. So they were very happy, with how fast we've been doing things. This goes back to my point, that digital transformation is very important to us. Going on is very important to us, and we are very, very supportive of the ICT's initiatives in this direction. Now, I've been talking about positive things. I'm malayo now sa script, no? So anyway, never mind that. But I've been talking about positive things. Next slide, please. Allow me now to talk about some negative things. Just because we're going online, just because we're going digital, doesn't mean that everything has been hunky-dory or well done. What has happened, there are bad actors. Someone mentioned earlier that there are bad, I think Attorney Mark, you mentioned that there are bad actors when it comes online. There are indeed bad actors. Precisely why the SEC an advisory on unregistered entities, I think in 2021, precisely stating that we are cautioning the public and advising them to avoid transacting with entities not registered in the Philippines, particularly because we can afford little to those entities, if ever. And we issued that in particular during the height of the Axie. I don't know if you're familiar with Axie Infinity. In 2021, it was like the thing. Everyone was into it, and what happened was that I had to come out public and say some statements in relation to it, and somehow I became a meme. This is a favorite slide of my staff. They always put this anytime I talk about tech stuff, no? Which reminds me, I really should remove that one of these days. But anyway, so that gives you an idea, how active the online field is. It can have some bad actors as well, to use the Attorney Mark's words. And next slide. So this leads me to my next slide then, where I point out that one of the SEC's primary mandates is investor protection, the primary focus for the Commission as well in this field. We at the SEC issued, ahead of the US SEC, for the sake of record, we conducted an investigation of Forsage's foreign investment taking activities and shared that information with the US SEC, which led the US SEC to conduct their own set of investigations. And I understand there are indictments now in the US in relation to Forsage. But we dealt with this first. We came out with a cease and desist order as early as, I think, I think 2020, around essentially, as background, Forsage is one of those entities that did illegal solicitation through supposedly a crowdfunding platform, and supposedly it's based on the Ethereum blockchain technology now. Anyway, in a press release by the US SEC issued last August 2022, it actually said, the US SEC, our counterpart, said that they charged 11 individuals for the roles in creating and promoting Forsage, which allegedly raised more than $300 million from millions of retail investors worldwide in the Philippines. But we came out with, and we informed the US SEC of that. So we're actually very active in this space. Next slide, please. Now, I'd like to point out that we're not only focusing on cryptocurrency-related scams. In fact, the Commission has been very aggressive in crackdowns on online illegal lending apps. What do we mean by online illegal lending apps? Lending apps that do not necessarily have a license from the SEC to operate. Okay, there are surprisingly a lot. If you operate a lending app, lending company without our licenses from the from the Lending Company Regulation Act and the Financing Company Act, then of course we have the power and the responsibility, to raid. And as you can see, we've actually raided particular companies in relation to that. Next slide, please. We've also issued we've also issued a lot of actions against different cryptocurrency-related scams. So what's my message then by showing these particular set of updates? Medyo negative ang tone. Technology is a grand tool, one which has shown and given government and the people a lot of advantages. But we must not forget that abuses are indeed possible, such as the scams and abuses we just pointed out. But the SEC remains vigilant and focused in dealing with the as seen on screen. I want to take this opportunity then to remind the public that you have to stay vigilant, and I reiterate our general advisory. Don't invest or transact with entities that are not registered in the Philippines, whether with the BSP, with the DICT, or with the SEC. Now, I think I'm about done. Next slide, please. Just the last few slides. So going back to the point that we are doing with ease of doing business and with the many digital innovations that we have introduced, January 3rd, 2023, the SEC, just this year, the SEC has already adopted a zero face-to-face transaction policy, where all applications have to be done online, including payment. In fact, we have cashiers that, in fairness, we did not fire them, but we have physical cashiers that we moved instead to other functions, precisely because we are now doing everything online as much as possible. Very rarely do we allow face-to-face and transactions unless there are issues or problems. You can email us and we can then allow you to come in. No? Two major reasons for this. One is because we already have a very good, well, I'd like to think it's a very good online complaint registration and filing system. And secondly, our new office, that by the way is our new office in our address. I highlight it because some people still go to PICC, but that's our new office and relatively new. And you will notice that because of the way it's set up as a building, there really isn't that much physical space. So we don't advise people to come visit us unless you have to. That's why I wanted to make sure this slide was there. No? So come see us if you have permission. So last slide. So anyway, so the SEC continues to maintain its adaptive, agile, and resilient outlook on fintech and the country's tech industry in order to have a regulatory environment that enables innovation to flourish while remaining vigilant for the sake of consumer and investor protection. I'd like to point out that regulation and enforcement is a necessary tool to foster responsible conduct in the market, its participants, and businesses. I guess my challenge for you today is how to view the different frameworks, roadmaps, accomplishments presented here in the forum today, and look at them perhaps as stepping stones, building blocks, or foundations for your future tech activities as well. Companies, fintech or tech companies who acknowledge and understand regulations have obviously a much better, clearer competitive advantage, and I look forward to working with you so long as you work with us. Again, thank you everyone for listening, and good afternoon.
Okay, we may invite again our chair for ICT, Attorney Mark. This is the Q&A portion.
Thank you, Bong. Thank you, Commissioner Lee, again for accepting my limitless invites for you to like speak to the private sector. No? So, wow, actually, sa tagalan natin, I think that was one of your most complete, concise, and extensive set updates with respect to tech or fintech initiatives of the SEC. So, just like I just have two questions before I pass it to our audience and Phoenix members here. With respect to, because like you literally covered all of my questions, but like, grabe. So, but I think you read my mind, Kom, no? All of my questions were answered. Also for a lot of lawyers here and compliance officers. But like, like on a high level, can you, of course, you shared again a lot of your initiatives and projects and pilots being spearheaded by the Philippine Tech Office, of course, under your office. How can our audience from Phoenix, siguro on a general sense, Com, can take advantage of these initiatives? And I guess like one of the lawyers here asked me earlier, they're happy to note the sandbox framework. Is that under the FinTech office? Is that application for exemptive relief? How do this come?
That's the thing, no, Attorney Mark. We haven't decided yet if we will consider it as an application for exemptive relief. But my general advice to people is that send us a white paper or a letter detailing what you intend to do, whether to my office or to a particular department within the SEC. We can then decide and determine what to do. For instance, the open finance framework that shown was based on a white paper that a particular lawyer sent to me a few months back. So that's my point, no? At least for me, I cannot speak for the rest of the commissioners, but at least on my end, I try to keep an open door policy. I try to ensure I engage with private sector because, well, number one, I originally came from private sector, so I know how hard it is to get to government. And I recall when I got into government, I recall thinking, okay, I'm not gonna make it. I want to keep an open mind. I want to keep an open door. Because just because I'm in government doesn't mean I know everything. Eh. In particular, someone like myself, no, who I like to think is relatively young. So bottom line, I want to keep an open door. I want to make sure that people are able to submit what they want to propose, and then we can determine and see based on the legal assessments. Because I think most of the time it's not even about the financial issues. Eh. A lot of the time it's about the legal side of things, whether or not the different laws I showed you earlier, apply.
Are applicable.
No? Correct. So that, I guess that's one thing. So from a high level, this goes back to the policy we created a few years back, delicate back policy on fintech. We want to keep an open mind. We want to be open to innovation, but we're always careful in relation to the legal aspect, in relation to the issues on financial integrity, financial stability. So balancing act.
Perfect. Thank you, Com. Com, we, of course, I'm sure you know we have like hundreds of viewers here in Facebook, no? Facebook and YouTube channel of Phoenix. You discussed now about eFast, eSpark, ePaySec. So I guess what they want to ask is, aside from these digital infrastructures, what other digital infrastructures are in your pipeline as you can disclose in the next 2 to 3 years? Of course, a lot na yun, no? But
Siguro months. Coming up very soon, no? The remark is the credentialing. What do I mean by credentialing? It's our version of eKYC.
eKYC.
It's like our version of eKYC for SEC transactions. By going through our credentialing program, essentially, it's similar to eKYC, no? What you do with GCash or with these other banking apps, so that it makes sure that you are allowed access to a whole suite of online services of the SEC. That's something I actually have the beta out already from a so I'm looking forward to having that launch in the next few months. Another thing that you should know is something called eSearch. We haven't decided if that's the final name, but if you're familiar with the iView, if you're familiar with SEC iView, this is the successor to that we've been working on for the last 2 years.
eSearch.
3 years actually. No, since mga 3 years. Essentially, it has updated data. It will come out in a digital format. Hopefully, it will be cheaper. I'm sorting out the payment system for we're sorting out the costing for that. No, but essentially, if you're going to check whether a company is okay or not, no, whether it exists or not, mas mabilis na yan through the tentatively named eSearch program.
So public documents, GIS, the articles, incorporation, I guess financial statements filed. Thank you.
And for those interested in the anti-money laundering issues, we have something called the Beneficial Ownership Registry, which I am getting funding from the ADB, which I hope to release this year as well. Beneficial Ownership Registry in relation to anti-money laundering issues. So these are top of mind for me na medyo I need to get out this year.
Thank you. Wow, very impressive. That's new too, and it's new news to me. Can we take 1 to 2 questions from the audience, because we took a lot of time of Commissioner Lee already. Question? Yeah. Then I have a question to our sponsor, if you don't mind.
Hi.
That's Mr. Stern.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very insightful. I just have a question on some clarifications on the crypto policy or the digital assets policy you mentioned before. So from our side, what we see is that Philippines is one of the largest adopters for cryptocurrency or digital assets in the world. In a couple of studies, it's very clearly shown there's significant use cases for digital assets in the Philippines and why the adoption is so big. And you rightly mentioned Axie Infinity. Our perspective from the private sector, we want more regulation. It's not just about regulating just the digital asset itself, but also the exchange itself and the people that run it. So my question is more around the SEC's perspective on sort of global trends that we're seeing around regulation. So I know as of last week, Eric Gensler basically said that all digital assets except for Bitcoin now need to be registered, falling under the SEC. Are we going to see similar trends in the Philippines, or what's the SEC's perspective on this?
Well, my personal perspective on that is that yes, most of them, depending on activity, should be considered securities. Precisely why we've been so careful about our digital asset offering rules. We've been more cautious than BSP has actually been quite aggressive. I wanted to laud nga si DepGov Mert earlier. I just didn't get a chance. They've been much more aggressive than us in that context. They've been they issued the vast, I think 2 years ago na eh. Kami, we're still just working out the drafts precisely because we've been so worried about the how to say this politely. We've been worried about the possible negative issues that will come from possible misuse or abuses of currencies. The best example of that, and I've had multiple conversations on this in Singapore, in the UK, in Paris actually as well, touched upon very quickly as well on the FTX matter. No, that was something that I think is a bit of a game changer, no, in this field. So I think the biggest trend I see, no, and with respect to your entity, I know your entity, you know, but the biggest trend I'm foreseeing is that there will be stricter regulations worldwide, I think. That is reflected in the direction of, for instance, of the EU when they come out with the MICA law, their MICA bill, no, from the European Council, precisely being more strict in relation to regulation. I understand the US is finally going in that direction as well. They actually came out with a separate EO, executive order, on cryptocurrencies, also being a bit more strict in that regard. Offhand, the only jurisdictions I see that are being still relatively lenient or light on this is the one in the Middle East. No, I think Dubai is still very lenient, but there will come a time, I think, that they will be forced as well to be a bit more strict under the circumstances. There's nothing. I don't think there's really anything we can do against that trend because we all know cryptocurrency is here to stay. It is something important. It's a game-changing technology, and I foresee that it will be a major player. The concept itself will continue to be an important aspect. I guess at this stage, we just have to try and adjust to the circumstances, try to make it palatable to the general public and safe for the general public. So that I guess that's my point. Now, sorry, I rambled. Unless you want to, we're good.
That's good. Thank you, Colm, for answering that. Last question from the audience to our sponsor, Mr. Adrian.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. You mentioned a number of countries earlier. In in your mind, sir, which country you aspire to be or you using as a
Emulate.
benchmark, and where are we right now in terms of that journey?
Oh, on the fintech side, no? You're referring to the cryptocurrency side or
As
more on
SEC
the...
in general.
If SEC in general, then of course we try to benchmark against MS, no Monetary Authority of Singapore, because they among our ASEAN brothers and I work in ASEAN a lot. No, I sit on something called the ASEAN Capital Markets Forum, which is like the UN for securities regulators in ASEAN. So I talk to them a lot, and I find that among them, MAS is the most advanced and the most stable among the different securities regulators. However, that being said, there are some policies I disagree with them naman. I find them overly strict, but that might be because they are a combined central bank slash securities regulator slash insurance regulator. 3-in-1 siya. When it comes to the cryptocurrency space, we are looking at SEC Thailand. What happened in SEC Thailand? SEC Thailand naman, what happened in 2019-ish, 2018-ish, they came out with a royal decree, no, through which I think is their form of legislation, essentially transferring all jurisdiction over digital assets, virtual assets, to their SEC. So they're looking at their example very closely. However, through informal talks with SEC Thailand counterparts, they've been telling me that they regret getting it. No. So also why I'm a little careful about this as well, because we might wind up in the same boat as the SEC Thailand. No, I've been told they have challenges in regulating the field as well. So it's a very dynamic space, no, with changes every day. So I can understand why it's a challenge. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. So yeah, I didn't know that. MA Singapore pala, Com, no? And of course, SEC, of course, sorry, Thailand, no, with respect to crypto regulations. That's new. Thank you. Com, if you don't mind, I'll just have one question for our sponsor that they will answer. So again, thank you to our sponsors today, AMTI and Huawei, for sponsoring our session this afternoon with our regulator. So I'd like to call on Ms. Jocelyn Bailon, Huawei Solutions Engineer. So Ms. Jocelyn, thank you for being here and for sponsoring our event. So calmly, if you don't mind, I'll just ask her a question. So for Huawei, I guess I wanted to ask, with the digital roadmap presented by our speakers, of course, Comli, Secretary Uy, BSP Deputy Governor Tangonan, and Huawei's being a global leader in technology, what role do you see Huawei plays or will contribute to advancing the ICT infrastructure of the country? Jocelyn.
Hello. Okay, so Thank you, Sir Attorney Mark. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, on behalf of Huawei Philippines, being a technology provider, so we are strongly believe that in terms of business innovations and transformation, that's why you'll see that we are one of the few brands in the market that has a portfolio of end-to-end solutions. So from data center to storage to network and to cloud infrastructures. So this is to make sure that we are able to help and provide a foundation to support our customers' infrastructures. So to help them achieve their business goals and of course to grow their business. So as we realize, as our customers grow, so we also need to continuously grow and develop technologies that arise to their development needs. So we make sure that we continuously develop and release a product to address the current needs of our customers. So for example, we have a ransomware features for our storage product. So this is the reason, or this is because of the current importance of security in the market. So our goal is a customer partner in the journey for every step of their way.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And on that note, thank you, Commissioner Calvin Lee. Thank you, AMTI. Thank you, Huawei, for sponsoring and supporting this event and, of course, investing in the Philippines. So on that note, again, can we give a round of applause to Commissioner Calvin Lee for gracing our event, sir? Salamat. Bong.
Before we call on the closing remarks, I would like to call on Adrian again as we give a token of appreciation to our speaker, Commissioner. Let's give him another round of applause. Our director, our liaison director, cannot make it for the closing remark. On her behalf, I would like to call on Co-Vice Chair of Phoenix, Mr. Adrian. Adrian, please, let's give him a round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure you've heard speakers, EICT Secretary Ivan Goy, BSP Deputy Governor Mert Tangonan, and Secretary Commissioner Kelvin Lee, and we'll take some time to digest what they said. It's really a privilege to have three together one event, articulating before us the digitalization roadmap that will help jumpstart our economy. Each one of them sounded like a man on a mission, and they definitely are. And wouldn't you be if you consider how important their roles are in unlocking the mind-blowing opportunities that are all before us. Just consider this. In the latest 2022 Google, Bain, and Temasek study on the Philippines economy, they highlighted that the Philippine economy was a very modest $8 billion in 2019. That was pre-pandemic. Fast forward to 2022, 3 years after the pandemic, the Philippine e-economy grew 2.5 times, or to US 20 billion. And that in 3 years from now, or by 2025, they project that this will grow by another 1.75% to US 35 billion. So if you look at it, we use the trends at 2030, they expect it to be a range of 100 billion USD or potentially 150 billion dollars. That's how big the e-economy is. Therefore, it is heartwarming and comforting to hear straight from our government officers their game plan on how they are putting the resources of their respective organizations behind the dream of a truly digital Philippines. Secretary Uy has mentioned it will be challenging but definitely not impossible. Commissioner Kelvin talked about the need to carefully balance the risk and benefits of the financial innovation. And BSP Deputy Governor Tangonan reiterated the BSP's commitment to foster an enabling policy environment to ensure that the Philippines will have a vibrant digital ecosystem. safe, secure, and inclusive. On the other hand, the private sector has responded to this call to action by forming the Private Sector Advisory Council, Digital Infrastructure, by launching the Filipinas Go-Digital Movement led by Henry. Phoenix, represented by the ICT Committee, is one of the member organizations committed to the national digital movement. There is a lot of work to be done. Today's session is the next way of reminding everyone of the need to have a whole of society approach to get these things done. So let us all be plugged in, get involved. The future is in our hands. And we would like to thank again our speakers, Secretary Ivan Uy, BSP Deputy Governor Bert Tangonan, and Commissioner Kelvin Lee. Our sponsors, AMTI and Huawei, our ICT committee members, Attorney Mark and Bong Loma, and our hardworking Phoenix Secretariat for putting this event together. Thank you again and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Adrian. On behalf of Phoenix and the ICT Committee, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you in the next Phoenix events. Thank you again to our speakers and to our partners, AMTI, Huawei. Thank you and have a good day. Stay safe.